Yeah. Mine just said it's recording.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Steve, for being here to talk about the history. So, my first question is to really talk about the very, very beginning. So, 1991, there was an organization called Stop of Brookline Hollis. So, were you involved in that original founding at all, or do you know their history,
No,
like why they?
I was approached by Diane Cole, who became Diane Zawicki in a marriage, later. So, and she maybe 1993. I I can't find any old records of when it was, but what happened was she came to my office looking to rent an office, and I rented her an office for uh, what was Stop of Brookline and Hollis, and she had incorporated Sauhegan Valley Boys and Girls Club, even though she hadn't been uh, sanctioned as a Boys and Girls Club, but she wanted to, and I thought it was just a absolutely great idea, and I her determination and her energy and commitment to doing it was obvious when I met with her, and I had an office available, and so I made a agreement with her that I would rent her the office for less than half of what the previous tenant was paying under the conditions she never asked me to be on the board because I was too busy. And so as a result of that, they moved into the office, and now I've been on the board for over 30 years. And um, what happened in that iteration was they moved into the office just as a place for them to meet and their little board um, in and they had like their balls for kickball and whatever equipment that they owned.
Mhm.
And then in order for their program, they would go to the Milford Armory, the National Guard Armory, and the boss would move the howitzer out of the garage, and the kids would play basketball on a rainy day inside the National Guard Armory. And then on occasion, Rick Holder at Hampshire Hills would allow them to have a court or something, that so, and that's how, and they would take them on, field trips and do whatever. And the original people that I dealt with was Diane Cole, Becky Mole, and B Perkins. And Diane was first, and Becky and B came along a year or so after. Um, but they were all single parents trying to keep their kids out of trouble.
Mhm.
It would be the motivation. And I think Diane was a payroll clerk at the high school or something like that, and that was her day job. But um, they they worked at it constantly, and I was really impressed. So um,
And it was like
anyway.
to get them away from, like, to keep them busy, off kind of off the streets kind of idea, right? So they weren't getting
Y-
involved in drugs and alcohol.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And that was their motivation.
And it was
And what
mostly
and
teenagers, just teens first, right? Do you remember when it became
just teens,
the first?
just teens. Absolutely. So then what happened, my next there were two guys that were in my Rotary Club that were um uh on the board of the Boys and Girls Club. It was called the Sauhegan Valley Boys and Girls Club Incorporated. and they came to me at Rotary, and the guys were Fredericks of Fredericks Pastries and Bill Williamson, who owned Radio Free Peterborough. And they came to me at Rotary and said, if we don't get some new blood, the Boys and Girls Club thing is not going to make it. And I had watched them for a year. I'm going to make up a time because I don't remember if it was a year or 2 years that they were in my office because my office was abutting it, and I saw how hard they were working at making the thing work. And so I said, "Oh, all right." I was president of the Milford Rotary, and I knew that was ending, uh, and not that that mattered. And I said, "I I think I'll go to the board meeting tonight because I absolutely, even though they promised never to ask me to be on the board, um, I will go to the meeting that night." So I went to the meeting that night, and they didn't. And I'm still there 30 years later, and they were gone. And so then what happened? What was that the Dominic from the Nashville Boys and Girls Club and Jimmy Tomato, who's a Milford guy that was on the board, and most importantly, Rich Lowney, who was on the Nashville board and grew up in a club in Chelsea or that area, Somerville, Chelsea area. Um, and Rich was a Amherst resident, and his wife Linda, and they have been on the board from the beginning. Shortly thereafter, I don't remember exactly what the year was. So now what we had was Sauhegan Valley Boys and Girls Club Incorporated, and the kids were going to the National Guard Armory or Hampshire Hills or on a field trip, and we decided that we needed to hire somebody to because everybody after work, couldn't take care of the kids after school and all that. We hired a guy named Brian Denoncourt, which I wish you would find out where he is. I think he works at the Nashua Club, not Nashua, Manchester.
Yeah.
Brian, uh, ran things, did whatever for a period of time. And then the guys at the not Masonic, the Grange, the Milford Granite Grange was the name of it, offered us their little Grange Hall because Grange members had reached an average age of 79 or something, and they had this meeting room that they only used once a month for an hour or 2 hours. So we set up foosball tables and ping pong tables and game things in a building that was maybe 30 by 60. And it was a really cool little building built as a Grange Hall. It had a stage, and the upper level had a room that was big enough for 30 or 40 kids to have fun goofing around. And the downstairs was a kitchen and a place to have a ham and bean supper, whatever the Grange guys did. And we operated there for, I don't know, a year, maybe two.
Mhm. Yeah,
And then um, the next phase was uh, so now at that point, the board was, in my memory, the board was Rich Lowney and me, maybe Rich's wife Linda, but maybe that came later. I'm not sure. Um, and at some point at the Grange Hall, Brian took a job elsewhere and we hired Dave Parker, who is our executive director and second executive director. And Dave was just an absolute dynamo. And he was so full of energy and had spent his life. His prior job was the Hayden Center in Lexington, Mass. Big, big operation. So anyway, he immediately the place just was a vibrant um, place for kids to come. We had a ton of kids there every afternoon, and so it was obvious. Oh, all right. So now I'm starting to think of some of those meetings downstairs. The board members, George Mandragoras came along from, who's still on the board, from Centronics, and Paul and Nancy Amato, who are friends of Dave Parker. And let me think, Mike Dion, um, a, CPA from town. And at that point in time, oh man, I just lost somebody else that Cy Tebow. He should be on the list. Cy Tebow, an insurance, Eaton and Berube insurance. Cy. We decided we wanted to build a building, and we wandered around and thinking, holy smokes, we got to raise $1 million. And at the time, $1 million was a lot of money. Now, $1 million seems like such a small amount of money with everything, talking trillions now. So at one meeting, somebody said, and if I was going to bet, it was probably Paul Amato. You know what we got to do? We got to rent something and build something, and um, and then we'll figure out buying something. So we wandered around town, found a vacant Aubuchon hardware store at Granite Plaza, and we, on the back of an envelope, said for 75 grand we can build a club. And so Milford Rotary, I made a phone call. My friend put us into for a grant from Milford Rotary for $10,000 to start the process. And they approved it within 3 weeks or whatever they called and said, yeah, definitely go to it. And we raised, it ended up costing 90,000 if I remember when we were done. And we made the club, which was 3,000 square feet, um, into um, a club. And it was I'm gonna guess 40 kids every day. The day we opened the door, it was, full of kids having a blast. And so that somebody's gonna put the year in there because I can't even remember. Do you know?
Looks like it was between 1997 and 1999.
Yeah.
We had it at the
Well, no, it would go from whenever that is until we moved into the club in
oh,
2005.
oh yeah, so 2000 is when you renovated the storefront. So you must have been, oh, you were in the Granite Grange from 97
So
to,
you think 2000, that adds up to me. To the year 2000, we went into the um, hardware store
yeah.
in roughly, and we were in there like
Eight.
5 years. Yeah, that would add up to me.
And it looks like you had
Yeah.
60 by the end of it. By the end of 2000, you had 60 kids a day.
Oh yeah. No, it happened fast. I would bet the first day we were there was 30.
Mm.
And one of the fun things then, guy Greg Hugh. No, the father was Hugh. What was Greg's name? The governor. Hugh was the father.
Judd Greg.
Judd Gregg was the governor.
Yeah.
No. senator. He was governor, but then he was senator. And he came to all of our everything we invited him to come to. He was such a great guy. And he'd come through town and he'd stop in to see how we were doing. That was a huge thing. Oh, also back to those days, something that was very significant was when we needed to do something, um, or money. Um, Dunkin' Donuts, this guy B. Perkins, who was involved in those years, to kind of phased out in the hardware store years. He was the manager of the local Dunkin' Donuts, and the family that owned them is Carl and Maria Andrade and their kids. And they would call all the stores in southern New Hampshire and say, "Give me your extra advertising money." And I'm gonna say in the years that we were in my office and the Grange Hall, Dunkin' Donuts donated half the money that we got. It was so awesome. They were really instrumental because these things, or the club, in the years from the beginning until the hardware store, probably first year, it could have died in a month. The whole thing could have been gone. But for Rich Lowney, Paul and Nancy and me, and George Mandragoras, Mike Dion, and the Dunkin' Donuts. Hitchner, I think, started coming in and helping us. I mean, it could have just gone away, and nobody would have ever known. It would have just been a leaf blowing by in the fall. And but Dave Parker, full of, you know, absolutely just full of life. And he would we would come up with some kind of a problem, and in an hour he would come up with a plan to, this is how we're going to do it. And the outside camps was his coup, that where we would actually charge people money to have outside camps. And that goes on today, that in the summertime. Yeah, so we got into the um, hardware store, and at that point in time, the board of directors didn't want to own any real estate. And all of this time, Grange Hall into the hardware store, we were a unit of the Nashua Club. And Norm Bottelier, I think that's how you say his name, Bot the something. Anyway, Bot doesn't matter. Norm from Dominic was the founder of Nashua. Norm was the second guy, and Norm was on our board, came to all the meetings, guided us through stuff. But from the minute Nashua got involved with us, they said, "You are 100% independent. We are never going to give you a penny," and they never did. So our board said, "We don't want to own real estate until we are our own club." And we started the process, and they gave us a book. I remember this. It was called SOEs. So
Mm.
Systems of Operational Effectiveness, something. Is that sound right?
They still have that.
Is that what the words mean? Systems of operational effectiveness, or it doesn't matter. That
Definitely,
doesn't.
it's definitely organizational effectiveness. I can't
Yeah,
remember what the S is right now.
yeah. So anyway,
It's standard.
what
Standard.
had, what had to happen is we had to meet. It was a 2-page, I mean, a 2-inch thick binder,
Mhm.
and we had to meet all of the categories of all of those things in order to be independent. And and we thought, we'd be in the hardware store 3 years, we'd get the money and we'd build a building. And it took us 5 years, it took us 3 years to get through the book and be convinced or convincing enough to convince the Boys and Girls Club. And I remember and I'm not sure, we must have got the charter before we started building the building. But we were hoping to be the 4,000th club. I don't know if we could ever find out because it was at that range. And so we got our charter, and Nancy Amato and Paul Amato and I started seriously wandering around the communities looking for a logical place to build the club. And that went on for, I would say, 2 months or 3 months. And Nancy made up her mind that it was going to be where it is, which was known as the American Stage Festival Summer Theater, which had fallen apart in the previous couple of years. And I told her, no, I'm not fundraising for a theater. And she said, yep. And we're going to get that building. And so they saw to it that we got the piece of property. And it only took me maybe 15 years to realize how wrong I really was then, because the theater became as valuable or more than a gymnasium. And everybody in the Boys and Girls Club world um, said you have to have a gymnasium, and they called it a magnet to get the kids to come to the club. And then you'd take them from the gym and make them do their homework or make them, have some kind of moral lesson out of being there. Um, but the theater attracted this hundreds of kids that were not jocks, and they had just as much need to have a boys and girls club as any jock ever did, and that never occurred to me before. Maybe it occurred to Nancy. I guess it probably did, but she was so right, and we were so lucky that it all went that way because now we have um, the theater. We have at least three teams that have gone to the national convention. Isn't that so? That have dance teams and theater teams that have gone to the national convention in wherever it was, California or Florida or whatever. And our we have hundreds of kids now that go through the programs um, in the theater.
And some famous alumni that have gone on to make something in the theater, their career, and have been very successful. So it's definitely good
Yeah,
story.
it is really, really something. One of the great uh, things that we have an auction fundraiser every year, and the lights and the sound are managed by a club kid that came there when he was 11 years old that makes his living now from theater production and doing that commercially. It's that was really something to seeing Tyler become a man and making a company out of his growing up at the club. Yeah.
I'm going to share the website that has the history on it so that we can have some of the visuals to go with the video. So can you see the website?
Yeah.
Hopefully this is being.
Oh,
So this has
yeah. That's the hardware store.
there's the hardware store, And then this is a picture from the groundbreaking, it looks like, or from the construction.
Oh, great.
Mhm.
We got to get a picture of the Grange Hall too.
Yeah. Do you know if you have any photos from the Grange?
Oh, it still exists, I think, doesn't it? Or did they tear it down? Somebody bought it. We'll find one.
Okay. So it looks like 2004 is when the club moved into the current home.
Okay.
And then when did the footbridge come? Was that at the same time?
Oh, that's a great story too. Um, the Nancy Amato and I were selectmen in those years, and Judd Gregg was senator from New Hampshire, and he uh, in the um, political wrangling of the Senate, Judd Gregg, they wanted to do um, a bunch of money to support youth to help them behaving themselves after school. And Judd Gregg said, we don't need to create another bureaucracy. We just need to give the money to boys and girls clubs and YMCAs to do the work. So Judd Gregg got the Boys and Girls Club in the vicinity of 50 to $100 million a year in the budget in the years that he was in the Senate. And so um, Nancy, the the senators and reps would come to the boards of selectmen in every town and meet with them once a year. Matt Leahy, I believe, was our guy's name. And he came in that year that we were building the club and said, "Is there anything we can do for you?" And Nancy said, "Yeah, we're building the Boys and Girls Club, and we want to put a bridge across the river to connect the club with the town swimming pool and baseball fields." So he put us in for what we all know as pork. It was an earmark on a budget bill, and they gave us $250,000 to build the bridge. And so that happened, I believe, the same year. It's the dates on the bridge. I believe it was the same year that we built the club, and it included the trail to go up the road and all that stuff. That
So the
was that
trail
was
around the club, that was at the same time, the one that the nature trail?
the say the trail.
Yeah, like the nature trail that goes along
No,
the river. Is that where?
I don't know. I don't know if the trail on the land of the club was part of that. I do know that going from there through the right of way past Milford Lumber to the sidewalk to connect to the baseball field on North River Road
Okay.
was,
Yeah.
because our goal was for it to go up the river, but it was not possible to get easements from the homeowners because they didn't want a bunch of kids in their backyard.
Mhm.
And actually, it made me just think of one other thing that happened in this time. Uh, the corporation that owns the property is called now Boys and Girls Club of Sauhegan Valley, where it used to be Sauhegan Valley Boys and Girls Club, Inc.
Mhm.
And the reason was that happened when we built the building because the all boys and girls clubs begin with the words Boys and Girls Club of.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think the corporation, Sauhegan Valley Boys and Girls Club Corporation, went away. And then the corporation that we now are was incorporated before we bought that piece of property. Or they changed the name, one or the other, but it was an interesting little factoid.
And then it looks like 2006 is when Riverbend Youth Company started, and the first
Yeah.
musical was Les Miserables.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah. And Robin LaCroix uh, came on. She was involved from the very beginning, I believe.
Yeah, that's amazing. She's been here a long.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that she was involved in stuff from the American Stage Festival and uh,
Hmm.
yeah, and so and she started uh, producing, if that's the word for what she does, all of the stuff that the theater was doing, and the and she just celebrated her 20th anniversary. She's our longest employee. Yeah.
And then, so then 2007, the floods.
Oh yeah, that'll cheer me up. Yeah. The oh, hang on, I gotta message this guy. I'll get back to him in a minute. Yeah, so 2007. So we are a couple of years into the um, new building, working on learning how to manage instead of a business that has two full-time people and 12 part-time people and 12 volunteers. Now we've got 15 full-time people, and we're just, busy as can be getting that all sorted out. And the river has a historic flood that floods the entire building that's only 2 years old. And I was so devastated because we had spent so much time, and I'm trying to run my own business and keep and support the club and it involved a lot of our time. We were down there on a daily basis. Myself and Paul and Nancy and George and Mike and all of the board, not to leave anybody out. I think Scott Comstock was then involved, who's still involved now. Don't want to leave anybody out, but just don't happen to remember every single person right now. But oh, very, very significant is John Seminowitz and Elise Desmay, um, who joined us in those years. And um, we now have a 25,000 square foot sponge. And we started at 6 o'clock the next morning. There were 30 firemen and the employees with mops and brooms, and most importantly, Paul and Nancy Amato and Sarah and Holly Amato, who are
Wow.
teenagers at the time, I believe, shoveling mud out of the club. And I was just so devastated because I was so tired from spending, you know, a year fundraising, a year building,
Mm,
and then a year trying to get the thing going.
and then
And now it's all a giant sponge. And anyway, we had a meeting like at noontime. Elise Dismay became the clerk of the works. They have Elise and John own as they now the son owns it now, but a steel construction company. And we had a meeting every morning at 6:30, and we began the repairs to the building. And so we had to get a just for an example of size, that we had to get a dehumidifier to dehumidify the building. There's only one company in the world that does that, and their company is Munters, and they came in with a tractor trailer, and they dropped off a dehumidifier that would dehumidify a 25,000 square foot building. They flew a guy in from Chicago and another guy from somewhere else. If I remember, the thing cost $4,000 a week.
Wow. Okay.
And I think that was what it was, 4,000 a week. And the and it required a 175 amp breaker at 408 volts. And so anyway, uh, every day we get there at 6:30, and at 7:30 20, 30, 40 people would wander in the door to volunteer to help us. And we had to cut every single piece of sheetrock off up 2 feet, and remove the wet mess. And because mold would grow in it. And we had grandmothers and mothers and children and grandfathers and teenagers and just business people that their business was closed, carrying wet insulation and sheetrock and muck
Mm.
out the back door into the dumpsters.
Where did
And
the kids go when this was happening? Did they have like another location where you
no,
kind of?
that was not even a consideration. We had, if they wanted to go somewhere, they could come help us clean up. You know, that was not even ever even discussed. It was, I have no idea what the kids did. And because this was like so crazy, it was
Yeah.
so anyway, that the I don't know what, I know it was Wednesday, and I'm like, I got to go to Rotary. And the I mean, I also had to go to my job at some point in time, but for now, that was going to have to wait. And one of the staff, I'm sure it was Caitlin, and what was the other girl's name? I'm going to think of the
Cindy?
Caitlin Hunter. What a great lady. Um, I said, we got to get pizzas, and so they went to get like 15 pizzas, and there was tables in the lobby of the theater where everybody would uh, gather to for whatever, and there was tables and chairs. And somebody told me after they counted the pizza day. I never made it to Rotary, we just had pizza, and they said they counted 40 people sitting there eating pizza. And this is, carpenters would walk in the door and say, how can I help? And I say, what do you know how to do? I'm a carpenter. I'm like, oh boy, that's great, you can run a tool. So I would get them going in a room cutting, because you had to cut the drywall with a saw, and then everybody else could follow behind with a bar and a knife to cut the insulation and take the stuff away, rip up the flooring, whatever. So anyway, that just, man, that's been wild rethinking that. That was a tough time.
Amazing. And then it looks like a lot of like the club recovered by 2009. The membership increased to 630 kids a year, which is pretty
Yeah,
interesting. And then
yeah,
2012, the Cass Coalition kind of merged in with the club. Do you remember anything about
yeah,
that history? How that came?
yeah, yeah. They Alan Wolfson, who was on the board, was involved with Cast.
Mhm.
So he would bring them in all the time to because it was such a compatible program. And so it then got merged into the club. Is that the year that it was
Yeah,
merged into the
20,
club?
2012. So that was through
Yeah.
Alan's connection then.
Alan Wolfson, yeah, he was involved with that, and actually, that's how we met Alan Wolfson, I believe, and then he became a part of our board
Okay.
and a president. what a wonderful man. And yeah. So Cast and Monica didn't, I don't know how long did Monica come with it immediately or that was after?
I don't know, I'll have to ask her because I've
Yeah.
been involved with it for a really long time. But wasn't she also doing social emotional learning for Nashua at one point?
Yeah. Yeah.
That
So I think it was a while before she was
mm.
totally an employee and all.
And then 2016, there's another groundbreaking. So do you want to add any history to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So then when we built the original club, we couldn't afford the original club cost 3 million bucks.
Mm,
Fundraiser told us we could raise 3 million bucks and the gym would have been another million.
mm,
So we kept it at the 3 million, which they were right. That's what we could raise. We said 10 years later, we'll build a gym.
mm,
10 years to the day, we said, let's get going. We got to build a gym. Did a fundraising. It took us 9 months to raise the 2 million bucks. And we built the gym and opened it in 2016. Yeah, that was easy. That was the easiest thing that we ever did.
that's amazing. Yeah, gyms, I guess so tangible and so visual and such a good contribution to the community. So I could see how that would go over well
Yeah,
here. And then 2018, the club is over 1,000 members in a year, which is the first
yeah,
time it ever did that.
yeah.
And of course, 2020, the pandemic happened. Do you want to?
Yeah, that was a mess. I mean, just the same as everybody else's life. It was just so screwed up all the time. And we did the best we could to operate everything virtually, but and the, it was just so great when that was over with. It
Kids were
just,
coming here though, right? Like schools were closed, but the kids were
yeah,
coming here when they couldn't go anywhere else.
yeah,
It's definitely
yeah,
a goal for the club
yeah.
for that, which is great. But then our membership dropped after 2020 because people started to get used to working from home and the kids were home. So
The
we,
other thing that it did was it screwed up just like I think everything, it screwed up the financing. There's all these grants for nothing and nobody's there, and you got to support all the real estate and employees, but they're really not doing what we were doing before. And then it just made a mess of everything that took a while to get it all straightened back out again after. But anyway, just like anything, just like everybody's business, you had to deal with it.
Mhm. And now we're still trying to get back up to those high numbers from the heydays. But I think transportation
Yeah.
is one of the limiting factors that we currently face, getting enough kids bused here for after school.
Yeah, transportation always was the biggest problem to get the kids from Heron Pond to our club.
Mhm.
Um, you know, that is the challenge, and um, it always has been from the very beginning.
And then
From home,
do you
yeah.
have any kind of stories that stick out in your mind of other sort of pivotal historical moments that we haven't covered or impact stories, maybe youth that you know that have been impacted or that you remember seeing in action or anything else you want to add?
No, I can't think of any. I've just been through my whole.
There's so many.
There are. It's
So
just
many.
such a great place.
Yeah.
It is such a great place.
Yeah, it's neat to see the impact on the kids here every day.
Yeah.
We'll have to encourage new board members to make sure they come into the club to see it in action. Hopefully no one
Yeah.
will have to cut drywall from the walls again, but
Oh my God. It's just unbelievable. That was crazy. Yeah, it's a great thing. That's one of my most precious possessions is the Boys and Girls Club of the Sauhegan Valley.
great. I'm gonna stop the recording.